whole thing. Just turned it off.
Twice as long for the minutes that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure it was Rich's fault because once he logged out, he had to leave.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out how to get out. So Rosie sent him out. And once that happened, it just, the whole thing got all, then he couldn't get back in. So he's trying to call.
Gary, when you are ready, I can go live on the IDA board.
I'm as ready as we're gonna get.
You're good.
So we're gonna have a joint meeting, Rosie, of all three.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Good morning. I'd like to call to order a joint meeting of the Chautauqua County IDA and Chautauqua Region Economic Development Corporation and the Capital Resource Corporation. Meeting at two locations, BWB Building, 201 West 3rd Street, Jamestown, New York, second floor boardroom. The Fredonia Technology Incubator, 214 Central Avenue, Dunkirk, New York, first floor, conference room, and electronically via live stream on YouTube and Zoom. It's December the 27th at 10:03. We'll start with a call to order and a roll call. Gary Henry is here. Brad Walters.
Here.
Megan Sheffield Smith.
Here.
Dan Hetzenrader.
Here.
Rhonda Johnson.
Here.
Jay Churchill.
Here.
Steve Thorpe.
Here.
Kevin Muldowney.
Here.
Thank you. You should have received the minutes from November 22nd and had a chance to review those. Do we have any questions on the minutes? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
we have a first and a second on the November 22nd minutes. We'll do a roll call vote on that. Gary Henry votes aye. Brad Walters.
Aye.
Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Dan Hetzenrader.
Aye.
Rhonda Johnson.
Aye.
Jay Churchill.
Aye.
Steve Thorpe.
Aye.
Kevin Muldowney.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Next, we'll move into new business. We'll start off with the acceptance of Mike Metzger's resignation.
Yeah, I can address that, Mr. Chairman. So on December 22nd, I received a resignation letter from Mike. It's unfortunate that I didn't know, or I didn't receive this letter prior to our gathering on the 18th. We certainly would have recognized him, but we'll do that next year. But we knew it was coming. He's been talking about it for a while. He's retiring from college, and he's got a lot of family stuff, and he's looking forward to that. But his letter reads, "It has been my distinct honor and privilege to serve on the CCIDA Board of Directors for 24 years. I have always been grateful for the opportunity to work with such outstanding members of our community. The CCIDA staff is one of the finest that I have been associated with in my career. I am resigning effective Thursday, December 22nd, 2022, wishing you continued success." So, this is bittersweet. Grateful that Mike's been with the IDA since his appointment in March of 1999. He's been the chairman for quite a few years, and he's just been an outstanding chairman and a contributor. He's also been on the Regional Economic Development Council for 8 years, I want to say, a voting member of that. So he's been a real advocate for the county and always pushing for projects for us. So yeah, it's going to be sad to see him go, but grateful that he served with us.
Thank you. Certainly, all of us that got to know Mike, whether it was on this board or through some other area, know what a great guy he was. Certainly was dedicated not only to this board, but to the whole community. And so we're certainly going to miss him and certainly appreciate his time. And if you get a chance to see him or you run across him, make sure you mention how much we appreciate what he did. Before we move on with any more new business, I skipped over, but I see PJ Wendell's with us here this morning, and I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to say or mention to the board.
Well, thank you. No, just really, if you look and read the paper, unfortunately, I would have liked to have seen it in headlines, but nonetheless, it was still there. Last week, we received $4.75 million in funding from the state with the I believe it's their Renew New York, the White Inn, the city of Dunkirk, the Welch's building, and there's one more. I can't just slip my head.
Silver Creek School.
Silver Creek School, right, which is an ongoing issue that, thank you, Mark, that's been going up for a long time. But just prior to that, another day before earlier in the week, we found some other funding from the Comedy Center, the Village of Celeron for their park. So, you look at what Mark and the IDA has done and what we're doing, with the Regional Economic Development Council out of Buffalo. Chautauqua County is vibrant. Chautauqua County is thriving. The economic growth is substantial. Mark, I know those guys are still working to do more, creating shovel-ready sites, looking to get some big, some plans off the ground. And there's still more, as I've learned from Mark, in the oven that's still baking, waiting to come. But I'm just really excited. A lot of people will, talk about negativity or the constant decline of population in the county. Well, there may be, but on the other hand, those of us who are still here are working feverishly to continue that economic growth and to continue blossoming Chautauqua County. So for that, I'm excited. I'm thrilled to be part of this and listening to the exciting news that comes out a little bit before, maybe the common public hears it. But again, thanks to everybody on the board for all of your hard work. Sad to see Mike is stepping aside, but obviously he's committed a long career with the IDA and has done a tremendous amount. So I wish him the best. I'm sure we'll see him around. Although I do have to say, Mike has always been very mild-mannered, and we were at Mark's daughter's wedding and they had to get around and take pictures with everybody. And I don't know, it just popped up and they said, be ready to take a picture. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, Mike's like, let's do a pyramid. I'm like, I mean, a lot of people you want to do this cheerleading pyramid. So we did it. And it was, I think Mark has copies of it down in his office. I have one in my house. But just, that's the funny thing that I learned from Mike. Just very, he's very stoic, very professional, but every once in a while he lets loose. And he was just out of all people. So that's my big, my comical story with Mike, but just really excited for all he's done. But really, really excited about this economic boom we're seeing here in the county and working for more. So thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, PJ. Next, we'll move into the report of the nomination committee. Do we know who's going to do that report?
What was Kevin? Is Kevin there?
I'm here.
Yeah, Kevin, I don't know if Jeanette ever emailed that to you because Jeanette was sick, but I apologize. I know we had talked about, Gary was going to be the chairman, Brad was the vice chair, Sagan was the treasurer, and Danny was going to be secretary. And I know they had all been spoken to, but I don't know if Jeanette ever got you the formal resolution. So you probably just have to make that recommendation verbally, Kevin, you and Brad.
Okay. So whatever Rich just said, I'll make the recommendation. That works.
Did anybody on the board have any questions on those recommendations or want them read again? We need to take a vote on that committee's recommendation.
I think the governance committee should accept the recommendation and present it to the board, Gary. Yeah.
Okay.
For their final approval.
So would somebody like to make a motion to accept those nominations for the board?
All three boards.
For all three boards.
Kevin motioned.
Kevin motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Rhonda, second. We'll do a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Brad Walters.
Aye.
Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Dan Hetzenrader.
Aye.
Rhonda Johnson.
Aye.
Jay Churchill.
Aye.
Stephen Thorpe.
Aye.
Kevin Muldowney.
Aye.
And the nomination have been accepted. So at this point, I'd just like to say as chairman of the board that I'm pretty sure this is like one of those trial by fire. They've intentionally set it up this morning so that as I take over as the chairman, you know, the technology's not working, you know, some of our help is out sick this morning. So, you know, if it's a little chaotic today, you know, right after Christmas, you'll just have to bear with me. And I did try to make one big change right at the start, you know, being from a manufacturing background, we like to start early. So I tried to get the meeting to start at 6:30 this morning, but after everybody on the board threatened to quit, I quickly gave up on that technique. So we moved the meeting back to the normal time of 10 o'clock.
Hey, Gary, this is my reaction to all of that.
Okay, I can't, except like your name is blocking your shirt, so I can't see what it says.
Here, look at this. Look at this.
Okay, thank you. So we have a little comedic relief, if nothing else, this morning.
My only contribution.
Next, we're going to move into housekeeping resolution. So this is C, and I believe we're actually going to take a look at 3 different resolutions, one for each board. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's right, Mr. Chair.
So this would be resolution 12/27/2201. Then for the critic board, it'd be resolution 12/27/22-05. And then for the Capital Resource Corporation, it would be resolution 12/27/2206, which are all housekeeping resolutions. So
And Mr.
Rich or
Chair, I would
Chris?
point out that the governance committee met just prior to this meeting and recommended all 3 resolutions to their respective boards.
Thank you, Melon. Rich or Chris, did you want to speak to this?
Chris, please, go ahead.
Sure. So we'll start with the IDA resolution. This just approves if you look on Schedule A to the resolution, it approves the officers of the board, officers of the agency. There'll be a meeting schedule attached to Schedule B to this resolution. And it also approves the appointments to the different boards. As Millen mentioned, these were recommended by the prior boards prior to this meeting. The audit committee will consist of Gary, Sagan, and Brad. The governance committee will consist of Gary and Dan, and the finance committee will consist of Gary, Sagan, and Brad. You'll also notice the appointment of agency and bond counsel, Philip Slidell and Hodgson Russ, as per usual. The appointment of the banking institutions of the IDA, and finally, the policies and procedures of the IDA that are currently in place. These are just approved again for the coming year. So that's for the IDA.
Well, Chris,
So
I
one
would
thing-
like to talk for a minute about how the policies will be revamped as we head into the new year once we receive the report from the Authority Budget Office. We'll be adding some policies, we'll be changing a lot of policies. Some will leave the same, but there will be a lot of work to do there, and I know Mark's right on top of that, so that's
Absolutely.
going to be time consuming and take a lot of time, but we'll get it done.
Rich, when do you expect that report? Have they given you any?
Mark, do you have an update on that? I thought we'd have had the draft by now, but.
Yeah, we don't know. We thought it would be, weeks ago, but they're still working on it, so we'll get it when we get it.
One thing to take note, if you look on the housekeeping resolutions, there's a couple typos there that we just wanted to point out. But Rhonda Johnson was left off the list and Brad was on there twice.
We saw
So-
that this morning. Yep. We'll fix
Bradley
it.
Walters will be the vice chairman and then Rhonda Johnson will be a member. And then
Yep.
also for agency staff, Jason is with us this morning. And so he should be listed under staff as well.
No problem. We'll fix.
Can we get a motion to approve C1?
So moved.
And again, this is for all 3 resolutions. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to interrupt you, but we should talk about the only difference in the resolutions. So the IDA approves the policies and procedures that are in place with the proviso that these will be looked at after the ABO audit. I don't believe the CRC or critic have policies and procedures in place at this point. And the idea here being that after the ABO audit's done and we've revamped the policy procedures of the IDA, most of those will be mirrored and created and established for Critic and the CRC. So you'll notice that policies and procedures are not dealt with in the housekeeping resolution for Critic or the CRC. That's the only difference. Just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you.
So does Gary need to, just a question, does Gary need to, or somebody need to make a motion for 3 different resolutions for all 3 or just one here?
One resolution for all, one for all 3, Mark. Yeah, one vote.
Right.
Okay.
And so we have that resolution moved by Sagan, seconded by Steve, and we'll take a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Bradley Walters.
Aye.
Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Dan Hetzenrader.
Aye.
Jay Churchill.
Aye.
Rhonda Johnson.
Aye.
Stephen Thorpe.
Aye.
Kevin Muldowney.
Aye.
And the resolution has passed. Next, we'll move into new business 3D, Ball Hill Wind. Rich or Dixon?
Yeah,
Millen?
I'll just speak about this briefly and then Millen can take over. So Ball Hill is our last of our wind farms. Ball Hill had some trouble, as you all know. It was in the paper, very well documented. Last year, they poured all their towers and bases. When they tested those towers late in the fall, none of them passed. So they had to dynamite every single base for their towers. And they recycled the concrete and did the right thing there. And they have re-poured all of those. And they are ready to set their towers in the spring. I don't know if anybody's been to Erie, but if you're driving down Erie on the left-hand side, you'll see all the blades sitting there. They were having a little trouble with their permit from New York State to get the blades over here as well. But everything's back on track now. And this resolution just extends their completion date. And I think, Millen, it extends the sales tax and also the agency lease. Is that correct?
That is correct. This consents to the extension of both of those dates. Nothing more, no additional financial assistance, nothing more than to recognize that they need another year for the construction and therefore pushes the lease out, et cetera.
That's all I have.
Anybody have any questions?
How many towers will it be?
25, I believe, Brad. I will send everyone in the board the physical address of where the laydown yard is, where all the trailers and all the people are working. I mean, there's a lot of people working up there. But when you get up to the top of Ball Hill, you actually see the other 2 wind farms. They look like they're almost next to each other. You know, I mean, because you are up there on Ball Hill. It's an amazing ride and an amazing view. I will send the address to everyone where they can go up and see all 3 of them because it's pretty impressive. So.
Any other questions?
Well, the good news for that, Brad, was that all the gravel they used in there, most of that came from Chautauqua County, so they had to get twice as much gravel from the gravel pits here, so that's good.
Dan, would you go ahead and move resolution D1?
Sure, I'll move resolution 12/27/22-02 Ball Hill Wind Consent Resolution.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jay. We have a first and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Brad Walters.
Aye.
Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Dan Hetzenrader.
Aye.
Rhonda Johnson.
Aye.
Jay Churchill.
Aye.
Stephen Thorpe.
Aye.
Kevin Muldowney.
Aye.
And it is passed. Next, we'll move into new business 3E, amendments to the pilot agreements presented by Millen.
Okay, Rich, do you want to start or you want me to jump in?
No, I'll start, Millen. You can explain what it does. So, as the board approves a pilot agreement, all pilots are different. All pilots are unique. All counties are different in the way they tax and assess and send out their bills. So while we were going through the authority budget office review, they found a few of the pilot agreements that the wording wasn't quite the way they liked it, and it was misleading. And one of them, it was actually wrong. It was not what the intent of the board was. And while we've done exactly what the board wanted us to do, we're collecting the right amount of money and dispersing it. The actual pilot agreements need amended. So Millen put together an amendment or a resolution here that would allow us to amend that by either a consent letter with the companies or whatever. And Millen will explain that too, just to make sure that the wording is now correct and it's been amended. So Millen, you want to talk about the resolution some more? Please go ahead.
Sure. It's a generic resolution that authorizes Rich or Mark to execute documents to amend the pilots, provided that none of the amendments increase the financial assistance, right? So we're not giving anyone additional financial assistance, and it does not otherwise change the project or the intent of the board. As Rich was saying, there's a couple of pilots that I think are correct, and we've explained that to the AVO, but they didn't like the way that it was worded. They said it was confusing. I want to emphasize what Rich said was that every applicant has paid the correct amount of pilot. They've all been billed the right amounts. The AVO just didn't like the way that it was written. And in particular, there's a phrase in there for some of them that uses an equalization rate. And that's very common downstate, quite honestly, where there's different tax jurisdictions that calculate the taxes differently. So some of the pilots had that as a provision, and the AVO just couldn't get their hands around that, quite honestly. So that's the sort of typo, and I don't even think it's a typo, but a clarification that we're going to make on a handful of these. But again, it doesn't change any of the projects, doesn't change what was approved by the board, and there's no additional financial assistance.
It's just a waste of time. I'm sorry for my commentary.
Jay, can you move new business E1?
E1, resolution 12/27/22/03 pilot administrative resolution.
And do we have a second?
Second.
So we have first by Jay, a second by Steve. We'll do a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Brad Walters.
Aye.
Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Dan Hetzenrader.
Aye.
Rhonda Johnson.
Aye.
Jay Churchill.
Aye.
Stephen Thorpe.
Aye.
Kevin Muldowney.
Aye.
And the resolution has passed. Mark, did you have anything you wanted to go over this morning?
Yeah, just real quick, the county executive already talked about the Restore New York grants that the county received. I just want to maybe add a little more detail to that. Chautauqua County got more than 40% of all of the Restore New York funding that was allocated in Western New York. So that's a real tribute to our efforts here. I think they're really good projects. The White Inn got $1.25 million. You all know how hard we worked on that. We were the applicant, the county was the applicant on that. Nate Aldrich and working with Randy Turner at Steve St. George's shop worked really hard on that. So that's really great news. That's going to really allow them to do it upright. Not that he wouldn't have otherwise, but this is gonna really push it over the top. The Welch's building got $1.5 million at Savarino. We've been working with them for a while. We approved incentives there. They've been working through sort of the historic preservation SHPO stuff, and they've got their capital stack is all figured out. This is gonna really finalize that. So that's good news. Silver Creek School, we've been working with the Region 9 people to do a housing project there. There was a fairly significant funding gap. They were awarded $1 million, and this is going to get them real close to where they need to be to make that project move. I think, without this money, there's no way that that project was gonna move forward. And, that old school is is almost beyond help, right? But hopefully this rescues it and brings it back, so. And then the last one was Dunkirk, the old P&G Foods on Central Avenue and the adjacent building. That's gonna turn that into sort of a Delaware market, if you will, but not as significant as that, but we'll restore that building in the building next door. That's with Alan Steinberg is the developer on that. So again, $4.75 million total of the restore New York money, which is great. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Dunkirk was allocated north of $4.5 million for a detached break wall out in front of the pier. We worked really hard on that project too. We contracted going back a couple of years with Edgewater Consultants out of Rochester to do a conceptual plan, really looking at what were the options for how they could mitigate the impact of the waves and the weather coming from the northeast. The nor'easters are banking off the pier and wrecking the marina. So we paid for a conceptual analysis, a feasibility study from Edgewater to really figure out what made sense, and then that was what was used by the mayor and development director to really ask for the funding to build this break wall. So that's going to do a lot for that marina. I think that marina is key to Dunkirk's longevity or well-being. So taking care of that problem is going to make a big difference. And then lastly, I wanted you to know that the annual report, I could have presented it today, maybe, but I wanted to get through this meeting. And then at January's meeting, I'll be presenting our annual report. Jason's working on that, Nate's working on that. It's going to be a joint Partnership for Economic Growth and IDA combined annual report. So that will be presented to you in January. So that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mark. PJ?
If I could, just Mark, to touch base on your discussion with the outer break wall. I traveled, actually, that was our biggest area of concern, and I've been pushing hard lately since the very first SAISH, the 100-year storm that hit now 4 years in a row. Well, this one is the storm of a generation. So my heart really does go out to everybody along the Lake Erie shoreline. But if you were to drive up there, you would swear you were on the coast of Florida during a hurricane when it was coming in. But the necessity of that outer break wall in Dunkirk is essential. And if you have any questions, just drive up to Barcelona Harbor, where they now have 3 acres of material that was not there prior to 2019. And essentially that harbor, as a safe harbor, has been closed due to the amount of debris and material that's been brought in. We're working with Julia Barrett O'Neill from Region 9, DEC's new executive director. She's doing a tremendous job. But those infrastructure pieces, they may seem, are they really working? Well, if you go to Barcelona and then you take a look at Dunkirk and see, I hate to say, but how little damage is actually happening in the city of Dunkirk along its pier, you'll understand the magnitude and really the effectiveness on that outer break wall. It's just, I was talking with somebody from Senator Schumer's office when we were there, and I said, you notice the difference in the waves, brown to green? He's like, yeah. I said, that's sediment washing in. So we talk about sediment transfer and we talk about closing off, Barcelona essentially is very limited. It's almost completely occluded now with sediment or big rocks coming in, and these seiches don't help. Another piece, I was just talking on the radio, Toledo reported the lowest levels of the lake in history. And when those lake levels drop, it all goes one place, and that's Chautauqua and Erie County. So, this weekend storm was beyond devastating, but I'm working with Senator Schumer's office because those people along the Lake Erie shoreline, Again, they've been told year after year, oh, this is a 100-year storm. Well, they're good for, as I see it, probably another 1,000 years when you look at the amount of damage. So again, that piece that Mark has assisted with is just huge when it talks to the stability of our waterfront, especially our harbors in both Dunkirk and Barcelona. So thanks, Mark. Great job.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other thing, and I should have said this. The study that I was talking about through Edgewater, Dave McCoy, who's our watershed coordinator at the county, he spearheaded that, and he's just doing great work. And he's somebody that sort of is under the radar, but behind the scenes, he's working really hard, making a lot of things happen. He's working on the Celeron project, where there's going to be equipment now dedicated to the hotel and the marinas down there. And he spearheaded this Edgewater study too, that led to that $4.5 million for the detached break wall. So just a shout out to Dave on that. Thank you.
Thank you both. And to PJ's point, if you have been to Barcelona, it's hard to believe. I grew up in that area, so spent a lot of time there when I was younger. But how much sediment has come in? I mean, it's filled in. The whole thing is filled in, and you wouldn't believe it could even happen. And so until you see something like that, or we see the pictures from the storms this weekend, and what some of the houses look like along the lake with the flooding or the ice damage, and certainly these things are critical, and it takes a lot of money and it takes a lot of effort. And so certainly thank Mark and the team and all the different people that you've mentioned, whether it's for that pier in Dunkirk or some of these other projects. You think of the school in Silver Creek, these are long-term projects we've worked on for years to try and get this funding, and to the amount that we were able to get for our area was certainly phenomenal. So well done by everybody. Next, we'll move into treasurer's report.
Yeah, I apologize, Mr. Chairman, because of the weather Friday and my computer this weekend and being sick today. I didn't finalize the November board report, but Mark and I and Kayla will be meeting with Sagan sometime in January to go over the financials in depth so we can bring her up to speed. And then in January, we'll report the year-end numbers, preliminary year-end numbers before the audit. But I will tell you, we are in good shape. Everything's doing extremely well right now. And Kayla will talk about the loans in executive session, and then we have a resolution about the loans. But we're in good shape right now. And again, I apologize. Just a series of events here that prohibited me from getting the report out. But we will be going over November's with Sagan in detail so she can get up to speed on the finances.
They made all set.
Did we have any questions for Rich at this point?
Hey, Rich, did the dog eat the homework?
No. Don't have a dog. Cat died. Don't have a dog. Just computer trouble and
It's like a country western song. I love it.
At this point, we'll go ahead and move in